This at its core is what project-based learning is all about. How do we boost our students' engagement so that all of the learning sticks? That's what we want. We want memorable learning experiences for our students. And project-based learning does this really well. But before we talk about how to do this, let's kind of get the cat out of the bag. The term project-based learning can carry some baggage with it, right? We've heard about projects, we've done projects that have failed miserably. Maybe we've been students in projects where we collaborated except we did all of the work, or maybe we didn't do all the work, but whatever reason is, we've got a bad taste in our mouths for what projects are. And I get that. But at its core, what project-based learning really is not this waste of time that we've maybe experienced in the past. And it's not even a brand new process that has to replace everything we've already learned and done well in our classroom. We don't have to get rid of effective grammar lessons. We don't have to replace all of the wonderful, maybe it's worksheets or activities that we have to teach the Pythagorean theorem or geometry or whatever it is that we teach. We don't have to get rid of what we already do well. Instead, what project-based learning does is it gives purpose and authenticity to the work students are doing. They're no longer just learning this content from whatever subject area or whatever grade level that we teach for the sake of learning that content. It's no longer just for grades or just for making your parents happy or just making this teacher happy or just even getting to the next level. Instead, students are learning content and obtaining new skills so that they can solve real problems to them. This is what project-based learning is. This is why we don't have to replace what we're already doing well. Instead, we're just enhancing that work. We're giving authenticity to it. How do we add authenticity to the work students are doing? How do we create real connections, give them meaningful work that they have to learn all of this content and get these skills in order to solve whatever problem is in front of them? So I'll illustrate that point. When my students were doing a project where they were serving World War II veterans by listening to their stories and then creating documentaries about them, writing narrative biographies about them, creating artwork for them, with the goal of creating this big event to honor World War II veterans in our own community. They wanted to make documentaries, little 6-minute documentaries to showcase at this big event in front of a lot of people. And so one of the requirements I had for that project, and to make sure that everybody in the crowd could understand what the veterans were saying when they watched these films, was to have subtitles in the film so people could read along to what the veterans were saying. So the first year we did this, I had my students put in the subtitles for their films, basically a written transcript of the interviews of their films. And it was a really great event and people were able to read along, but afterwards veterans were coming up to me saying, "Thanks so much for this event, teacher, but man, you need to teach those kids how to spell." Or man, those kids don't know how to use periods, because it was kind of a disaster. I didn't check any of my students' subtitles beforehand, and there were names misspelled, and they were writing the word I like lowercase and the word you with just the letter U. It was a disaster. It looked terrible. So even though the films turned out really great and we were able to honor the veterans in some way, there was this huge distraction happening. And so as a teacher, I had to think, okay, what can we do to make sure this doesn't happen the next year? And so the next time we did this project, the following year, I made sure my students put in subtitles, but I also did a whole grammar and spelling unit along with this project. My students were now learning proper grammar and proper spelling, not because there was a grade attached, not just so they could move on to the next level, or not to make me or their parents happy. They were learning spelling and grammar so that they could have excellent films, so they wouldn't distract the audience from their hard work. And that's what we did. And I found, and I've always found, that the best way to teach grammar, at least in my opinion, in my own experience, is sometimes to stand in front of a whiteboard and for me to demonstrate strong grammar, and then for have my students to practice, and then me demonstrate again, and then practice. And sometimes I even bust out an old worksheet so they can have some repetition. Very traditional schoolwork, traditional teaching techniques, except now there's a purpose for them. I can say to my students, you're not just learning grammar because I said so. You're learning grammar for this project. There's a reason for it. And so when I'm asking you to do something that might be a little tedious and even, dare I say, boring, it's worth it because it's all serving this purpose. It's giving purpose to the work that students are doing. This is what project-based learning is. Again, this is why we don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We don't have to get rid of the techniques that we know already work well. I'm not the biggest fan of big, long lectures in the classroom. I don't think they're effective, and I think there's a lot of research to support that. But sometimes there is purpose behind direct instruction, getting big ideas across. Sometimes you can give a 15-minute lecture that is necessary necessary and good and students love it. We don't have to get rid of that with project-based learning. It's not replacing that. It's giving purpose to it. We don't necessarily have to throw out every single textbook if there's a section that you really love to teach from. Now we're just giving a purpose behind learning whatever that subject matter is. That's what project-based learning is. And if you don't like the term PBL or project-based learning, just get rid of it. Call it authentic learning. Call it, I'm giving meaning to the work that students are doing. Call it purpose-based learning. Whatever it is, that is at the heart of what PBL is giving authenticity and purpose to the work that students do so that we can boost their engagement, get them more engaged in what's happening in the classroom so that students remember the information later on. So they're engaged deeply, they're invested in it, which is transformative.